All right, and I'm going to go ahead and stop my video for now, as I cannot see myself. And then I will go ahead and start the presentation. All right, so again, today we're talking about preparing for your interview. If you're just joining us, I'm Manisha. I'm the interim director here at Health Professions Advising. And this is a little unnerving because I can't see you all raise your hands or whatnot, but we're going to go with it. And again, if you want to unmute and call out questions, that would be great, as I cannot see the chat function now that I've begun. So here's the exciting part. I know some of you or some of my current applicants have been starting to get interviews. So that's super exciting. We have that interview now. So what happens? What happens next, right? How do we prepare? What is it that we should be thinking about in terms of scheduling to actually preparing and showing up for interviews? So I want to ask you all, and again, please unmute whenever I ask a question. But why do you think schools interview? Why do you think health professional schools interview? They have your application. What's the point of the interview then? What do you think?
I think schools want to see if you're a good mission fit. So when just from talking to you, do you seem like they would fit in with your cohort and the culture they want to create?
Yeah. So are you a good fit? Any other ideas? Anyone else want to toss something in? Why schools would want to interview after reading so many applications?
I would say to get a feel of your personality as well. It's hard to see exactly how you are, or if you'd be a good fit in their eyes personality wise, and the way you carry yourself based on a piece of paper, based on your written application.
Yeah, absolutely. So up to now, just like you mentioned, they have seen your application and you've been, while informative, a pretty flat profile. One-dimensional, right? Two-dimensional. So now they want to see who you are. Get a sense of your non-academic factors, which is your personality. Get a sense of your readiness for school and the profession. Get a sense of your maturity and self-awareness, and your personality qualities, your interpersonal, your communication skills, your awareness of strengths, weaknesses, and challenges in how you've approached addressing them, your ethics. And, as Aaliyah mentioned, it's all about who you are and how you fit with the school. Your grades and scores and what you wrote got you the interview. And this next step of the actual interview informs them of who they're letting in. They're also evaluating the class as a whole. So let's say the average medical school or DVM program holds about 100 people, right? So they don't want to bring in 100 of the same person. They want to bring diversity. They want to bring different thoughts, ideas, whether that comes from ages or experiences or cultural or other identities that you may hold. And this in turn supports the school outputting health professionals that go back and serve the diverse communities that we all make up. So there's a lot of factors and facets the school's looking at when they choose to interview you. It's not just you as an individual, but you as the class as a whole. And what value. So many of you, as you're doing your secondaries, have been answering the diversity question in many different variations. And that's what the interview is also about. Building a class where you will support your cohort supports you, and the school's outputting a very diverse class that goes back into the community.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Are you trying to show us a PowerPoint right now?
Are we not seeing a PowerPoint?
No.
All right, let's try this again. Thank you for bringing that up. So this is the screen I want to show you. So bear with me because, okay, so I'm, all right, let's try this again. This is the screen I want to share. All right, now let me start the presentation again. Are we seeing something now?
Yes.
Thank you,
Yes.
thank you. Oh my goodness. Okay, and actually, you know what? That handled the issue of me seeing chat. So I can actually see chat now. Okay, we're learning. So this was the first, really the first slide. The other one was just more like fun, right? You got the interview, now what? So in terms of content, so what they're trying to get to know of you. All right, so what does your interview day look like? For those of you who've started getting interview offers, you are possibly getting options as to what your day may look like, but you can expect one or multiple interviews. The school plans your interview day or days, especially if it's virtual. You will likely be interviewed by faculty and or a current student, especially if there's multiple interviews. Different formats, so it could be one-on-one, which is what we call traditional, face-to-face or screen face-to-face, a panel or a small group. Panel meaning multiple people are interviewing you or you and other applicants, or small group, you are part of other candidates or applicants interviewing that day. Situational judgment. So this is more either one of the tests you've taken, whether it's like Casper or AAMC's SJ, or types of questions that might be asked of you. And then the multiple mini interview, or the MMI, which is again a style of interview that you are taken through. Open, meaning an interviewer has had the opportunity to review your application or has the application in front of you. Blind, meaning the interview knows nothing about you other than you were granted an interview. Quick pause. And again, if you notice, I'm going to be going over more depth of each of these different types throughout this week. But any questions so far? And again, like I said, I can see chat, or you're always welcome to shout out a question. All right.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Good question, Phoebe. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. So if y'all worked with me before, you know that I truly detest SDN, Student Doctor Network or Reddit, but for the purposes of preparing for interviews, SDN is a good place to go into, laser focus, see if anyone's posted about their interview day, and back out. So this would be the one good use of SDN, just to find out. Schools might let you know if it's open or blind, they may not, but SDN might be a good source. So the difference between SJT and MMI. So SJT is the types of questions or the actual test you might have to take, such as Casper or the SJ offered by AAMC. MMI can involve SJ type questions within the interview day or within the interview stations. They can have any type of behavioral SJ types of questions. So SJ and behavioral are kind of types of questions and the strategy for preparing for them. MMI can host these types of questions. But these types of questions could also be offered in a one-on-one or panel. So that's the difference beyond the actual physical tests you might be taking. So let's talk a little bit about preparation. So be ready to answer almost, any type of question. You might be asked questions related to your academics, your activities and hobbies, your employment or research. It might be also your views on healthcare challenges, or questions to try to get to know your ethical values, and also why you want to be in healthcare or that specific type of healthcare professional. And be prepared for follow-up questions, meaning if it is an open interview and they have their application in front of you, they have more opportunity to dig a little bit deeper and to say, so I saw that you did this. I'd like to know more about this, right? In a closed file interview or a blind interview, you can probably expect more general questions related to anything from your academics to your views, but more kind of prescription type questions versus an open, you might expect anything and everything, and someone to kind of dig in and poke around what you've been involved in. So it's really critical that you know your application material well. If you wrote about it, you should be able to talk about it. Thinking about when you submitted your primary application and when you submitted your secondary, it could potentially be months before you're in a position that you're actually talking about what you've written about. So don't assume you're going to remember what you actually wrote. Take the time to review it, especially your secondaries. To give you an example, a few years back, I had a young lady in an open file interview, and I'm going to call it like it was a perfect storm situation. She was being interviewed by a faculty member that just happened to do very similar research that she had been involved in the middle of her undergrad years. And this interviewer was super excited and had a question about a certain protocol that her PI might, or that was being used. And her response, I don't remember, that was a few years ago, because she was thrown off. So what do you think happened? What do you think happened in that interview after that? Any thoughts? You think it still went well? I don't know. I mean, ultimately, possibly not accepted, but
I imagine the enthusiasm kind of took a nosedive a little bit.
Exactly. The enthusiasm lost, that interviewer just lost interest, right? And again, I call it a perfect storm, but if, again, if you want to think about it, possibly this interviewer was paired with her because of this similarity in background, right? And so enthusiasm gone. So don't, again, assume, and I'm using this as kind of a one-off, but it's something to think about. If it was important enough for you to write about it, include it, then I expect you should be able to talk about it and explain it in both professional and everyday language to whoever is sitting across from you. And again, I've had applicants say, well, I can't, that's a lot to review. Well, it is. I agree. It's also your future profession, and it's also you trying to get into this medical school. So take the time. It will only serve you well, help you have that confidence, and help you feel prepared, where even if you had to take a minute to kind of grasp that information out of your head, the information is there and not lost. So that's my 2 cents. Take a moment, take the time to review it. So do your research, right? So someone had mentioned earlier, schools are also trying to evaluate you on fit, right? So do your research. You would have done that anyways when you selected the schools you selected at the time of application, but now is the time to brush up on that. Read them again. Read anything that's going on in their blogs or current news, any changes that might have taken place. Schools are always proud of themselves when they've gotten an award or they've made a change in their curricula or they've offered something new. So read about it and be prepared to talk about it. Brush up on current issues or controversies currently in healthcare and your future health profession. And that varies health profession to health profession, right? Right now, everyone's still talking about COVID and what's going on. For those of you applying to vet school, it's, the big topic that's always there is about burnout. If you're applying to, another health profession, it could be some of the new technologies that have been introduced. But have that awareness, have an awareness of what's going on in the news. Just speaking specifically to DVM a couple years ago, there was a huge controversy, and I don't know the numbers exact, but it was big enough to feel shocking, is that California put down something like over 1,000 wild horses because wherever they were destroying a part of a natural habitat. And so this is a controversy, right? Could these have been rehomed? Could these animals have been sent somewhere else? But California chose to put them down. And that's a controversy that as a DVM, I'd expect you to be able to talk about. And so these are the things to be aware of. Again, be able to speak to why you selected this program and why you think you're a good fit. What are your reasons for coming to this school? And that you're going to team well with the folks there, right? You don't know who else is there beyond if you're part of a group interview, but they're trying to get to know who you are and how you team with others. There's always time in an interview to ask questions back. And I'd like you to be prepared for them, but make sure they're good ones. I don't expect you to ask things that you can readily find off their website that you could have found during your research. Ask follow-up questions. Ask more, questions that, poke out details of their program as well. When you start asking these questions back and you turn an interview from a back and forth monologue of, somebody asking a question and you spending all this time talking to them, a Q&A, and turning into a dialogue, those are the best interviews. In fact, I'm going to let you in on something. If the faculty interviewer, takes over and starts running the show and is talking more than asking you questions, that's actually a good interview. I've had people come back and say, it feels unnerving because here you are hoping to be able to share everything and anything about you, but here's this faculty kind of going on and on about what they're doing, their school, their courses. Here's the thing, that person has already made a positive impression about you. Now they're telling you about the school, meaning they've already made a favorable impression. I don't know if that, 100% leads to an acceptance, but they're comfortable with you enough to go. And I'm going to move this because I don't know why it suddenly showed up. To go beyond that and to just have this conversation with you where they're talking. So let it go. Let it go. Let them share. Again, it feels unnerving. Everyone that's had that experience is they're unnerved, but I feel like I've heard most of the time it's a positive outcome. Now, when I'm talking to you about like asking things that you can't readily find online, this could be asking if you don't know who your interviewer, what they're teaching, what they found has made a good candidate, what they found as students that are successful. If you're being interviewed by a med student, right, or a vet student, or a student from that school, think about what you'd want to know that's not easily found that someone from that school can share. Daily life, why they chose that school. If you think about it, if a high schooler came and was asking like, why'd you pick UC Davis over other schools? It's the same thing. You have an opportunity to ask someone, what their experience has been like so far there. Madeline, to your question of the conversational style, it's probably more likely on a one-on-one interview. It's likely not going to happen in an MMI, short of if you're in a station that's a little bit more traditional, where it's a question about you, right? Or something about your experiences. But yes, it's going to be more in a traditional interview where it's you with another person, whether it's a med student or faculty. So good question. So types of questions, and this is just building on what I've been saying. Everything about you is fair game. Questions can vary from, super open-ended, the infamous tell me about yourself, to tell me about your non-academic interests. Questions picking out your maturity and self-awareness. An example, like a difficult conversation you've had, the most difficult news you've ever had to give, questions regarding, a mistake you've made, current issues. COVID-19 is on everyone's brain right now, but again, this could also be specific to the health profession you're going into. Dedication to profession, like, what makes a good blank, or how do you see, how do you know you want to, oh, sorry about the typo. How do you know you'll still want to do this in 10 years? Or where do you see yourself in 10 years? Personal or academic struggles and how you've addressed that. So you can Google sample questions and, kind of think about how you would respond to them. There are types of questions that are very common, right, that you might see. And then there's always the schools that do one-offs. So as you're doing your secondaries, you also sort of get a sense for what the school might be poking you about, right? Every school has different kind of secondaries. So what is it that they're asking in their secondaries that you might want to brush up on a little bit? But again, anybody can ask some out of the question, or out of what the left field questions. So what types of non-academic interests are they looking for? Anything, Kat. It could be anything. A school that's going to ask a question like this is just trying to get to know you, right? They've seen your application and they've read it. They want to know, what else are you involved in? So this could also be like the tell me about yourself. The tell me about yourself should never be mistaken for why this school or why this health profession. Those are three different questions that you would be answering. The tell me about yourself is just that. So my name is, maybe some things you were involved in growing up, maybe what they've let you to do, in undergrad, maybe things you've experienced, outside of academics, what you're involved in, and that's a little bit about me today. So you want to think of maybe, 3 to 5 pieces of yourself that you want to talk about that showcases your interests, things that have shaped you, things that have formed your personality and or interests, and that's a little bit about you. Now, why this school is its own question. Why medicine or why DVM is its own question. So don't mistake the 3. Now, a school that might ask about your non-academic interests is just that. What do you do? So let's dive a little bit deeper with that, since you asked that question, Kat. Why do you think a school might want to know about this? I've answered that partially, but what else do you think they're trying to hear from you? Not in what types of things you do, but why would they want to know this about you? Okay, so that is one thing, that you're well-rounded, possibly relatable. What else could you think about?
What you do to cope.
Great, right? With your external interests, these might also be the interests that take you through your very rigorous 4 to 7 years that you're going to be faced. Also to what you do to balance work and relax. Great, Aditi. And going back to Kat, your patience, right? Your patience. So ways to be able to connect with other people, but let's bring it even sooner, your fellow students. So very much wanting to get to know you, like someone that says, well, you know, for fun, I work at a student-run clinic and I do research. Do you think this is what they're wanting to hear from you? No, right? They've already read about that. So, you know, I can't directly answer that question. Yeah, Kat, absolutely not. When I've been asked this question is, you know, and going back to the tell me about yourself, I talk about my interest in baking and that I'm the family baker. You know, I love making birthday cakes for pre-COVID when we were gathering for that. So absolutely not. I don't think it's unprofessional. I think it gives them insight to who you are, right? And it can be a conversational piece. So no, absolutely not. I think, you know, if I were to think something that might make me blink twice, but again, I think it's all about how it's framed, is I had someone talk about that they're also a professional gambler. I will admit I blinked twice during that mock interview. But they, you know, this person was saying like, that's how they've been financing school. I'm like, okay, let's think about this. But again, I think that is the one thing I might say I blinked twice, the professional gambler. But again, how often do you meet professional gamblers who are undergrads? But this person was like, hey, you know, I do this on off time. Hunter, you're challenging me here. No, don't apologize. I don't know. I would say I will never disrespect anything someone has done that leads them to their professional goals. It is funny that you bring up stripping because I have worked with a medical school applicant that because, and I'm trying to respect this person's privacy, but because of the circumstances they were faced in undergrad as losing their sources of income, that is one of the 5 jobs that they did to ensure they could stay in school. And so we spoke about it as a way of demonstrating resilience and adaptability, and that they were going to do anything and everything possible to stay in school, and they managed to maintain a decent GPA with the 5 jobs they're doing. So I think stripping in the bigger picture of who an applicant is paves for a broader conversation. So I'm not going to nix that as a conversation or as something to bring up. I'm going to say, I hope by then you and I would have worked together, and we know, me as your advisor can help you frame it. But again, I'm not going to ever disrespect anything anyone's done that leads to their ultimate goal. And that applicant I worked with a couple of years back helped me frame my mindset as well. So don't apologize, Hunter. I think it's you. Well, I don't know if you meant it kiddingly or serious, but I actually worked with someone and we talked about it in the application as one of the many things they had to do to stay in school and maintain a research job and a decent GPA. So good question, whether it was meant seriously or in jest, but yeah, I don't think it's off the table. Again, context is everything. While we're on this page of types of questions, anything else somebody might be concerned about, like how might I frame this or start this? This is a good time to throw that at me. So I'm gonna pause for a second. If you want to unmute or throw it in chat, we'll take it. Oh, goodness. Hang on a second, I lost. There we go. I lost chat for a second. I'm trying to bring it back. Okay. So somebody brought up, did you want to ask your question out loud?
Yeah, sure. I think it's faster than typing.
Okay.
I was just thinking, so I'm applying to MD, and so a lot of my hobbies or interests or non-academic activities, or if I'm just describing myself, I would definitely describe my love of animals, and I've enjoyed like volunteering at animal shelters. And I guess like, how would you personally approach it in a way that doesn't come off that so they don't want to ask the follow-up question, so why aren't you a vet then? Or why aren't you applying to be a vet?
It's a great question, and something that I would say opens. Okay, so one, you describe it as I've always had an interest in animals, and kind of describing what you've done. This has been something that has been part of my life. And if they do ask you so why aren't you applying to vet? This is the question, why medical school? So in evaluating my professional interests and what I've learned through all my experiences, I know I want to be a doctor because of X, Y, and Z, right? That allows you or gives you a window to go back through, and here's what affirms medicine for me. Does that help you?
Yeah, that definitely helps. Thank you.
So I wouldn't be afraid of having these other interests. I would tie it back into, that's a great question. And so I know animals will always be a part of my life, but I know I want to be a doctor because of X, Y, and Z. I did have someone direct message me, so I want to kind of address a question that came up regarding mental health and approaching that. So let me just read this question and chat to myself. Okay, so the question, and again, trying to respect the individual's privacy, is how do we address mental health? Mental health is a part of who I am, and me addressing this and is one of how I approach who I am. I think you can talk about it and not look like you're weak when you talk about the strengths and what you've learned about yourself managing this, right? And I think to this individual and anybody else who talks about mental health, maybe this is a good time to have a one-on-one meeting So we can talk about how you approach your response. I'm sure if you're thinking about it as an interview question, I'm sure you've written about it. So it's that bag is already open, and not that it should have ever been in a bag, but to talk about it in terms of strengths, in terms of empathy and compassion and diversity, and to learning the tools to manage yourself, and that you've built these tools that will help you manage the rigor of the health professional school you're approaching, and that you know how to seek out assistance. So I don't know this individual's whole story, but I would say that might be how I would approach it. And then if you ever wanted to come for drop-ins and meet individually, myself and any one of the staff advisors, or separately, if I haven't mentioned it, you're also welcome to schedule yourself for a one-on-one 30-minute appointment to do mock interviews. So that is just like you would have met with us, HPA, along the way to work on your application. You can also do 30-minute mock interviews with us. So it sounds like I answered that person's question, but that would be the approach from a strength-based approach. Peter, why do some schools have 2 one-on-one interviews? And is any one more important than the other? So 2, one with a faculty and one with a med student. So one person's evaluating you probably from the perspective of readiness and fit. That would be the faculty. One person's evaluating you readiness and to be a peer. That would be the med student, right? Is one more important than the other? No, I think both people are going to weigh in to admissions to talk to you about your fitness to be a peer and a team player, and to your readiness and maturity to actually do this. Having a little experience kind of speaking with med students. So I used to do applicant interviews for Stanford when they did their MMIs, and the MMI interviewers were made up of faculty, were made up of other health professionals, were made up of individuals like myself, someone who has an interest in or pre-health advisors, as well as med students. And I will say med students were kind of the meanest when I would hear them during the debriefing or pre-interview. They were kind of like, the attitude for some, I'm not going to generalize and say everybody, but the many I would listen to were like, yeah, I want to know if this person's actually like Stanford material or, will fit here. So that could be, just something food for thought. Aaliyah, or 2 with faculty. Yeah, different perspectives, right? To prevent bias, excellent, right? To have 2 different. So interviewers are subjective. It's not like because they were given some questions to ask you, they're going to take it objectively. And that's the challenge. Just like with your application, not everyone's going to love you. And so 1, it's really important to be yourself and authentic. And 2, yeah, it could be to help prevent bias, to have 2 different people meet with you, to have 2 different perspectives, right? Or different perspectives on how you engage and relate with different people. But if someone suddenly sprouted a bias about you, and this other person is saying, I met a completely different individual during the interview, that tells admissions like they might want to poke you a little bit more. And, I've heard of 3rd interviews being set up when we've had, or when schools have had 2 different interviewers say completely different things. And that's to your benefit. So thank you, Aaliyah, for bringing up that point as well. Any other questions before we start talking about kind of preparation in terms of you yourself preparing? But really good questions that have been brought up. So I'm going to take just a few seconds to see if anything comes up out loud or in chat. All right. So let's talk about your responses. And Hunter, because I'm not an expert, applicants I know want to become doctors. Yep. Yeah, absolutely, Hunter. And that's what I mean. It's you, right? I don't, yes, there might still be stigma, but I suspect if you brought it up in your application, you are absolutely ready to talk about it. So I don't think it's a hiding point. It's a reflection of what you've gained through dealing with or managing mental health. And it's a perspective, it's a piece of your diversity. So thank you, right? No one's an expert and everyone's going to have an opinion, but I say it's a part of who you are. It's again, how you frame it. And again, a strength-based approach. So in talking about your responses, attitude is everything. And when I say attitude, I do not mean ego. Ego has no place in an interview. You worked hard to get it. It's your first impressions. It's demonstrating, your readiness, and it's demonstrating confidence in yourself. So you want to think about, what does that look like? What does that sound like? What does that feel like? I'm not saying confidence is not, you not having nervousness. It's absolutely okay to be nervous, but don't let nerves get the best of you. And so you want to think about day of, what is it that you're going to do to manage that? I know that I get nervous before interviews, and I actually just acknowledge it when they ask me, welcome, Manisha, how are you doing today? I absolutely admit, and that's my way of checking myself. I'm very excited to be here. I will admit I'm nervous, but I'm really excited that you invited me, and I'm, looking forward to sharing a little bit about myself and my interest in this position. So I own my nervousness. I don't let it own me. And so in thinking about how you have performed in past interviews, how you've managed your anxiety and nerves, what you need to do, I want you to think about what confidence looks like and what confidence feels like, and prepare yourself accordingly. Don't let anxiety and nerves win. If that might be looking at a mirror, if that might mean, how many times you need to practice, if that might mean, your support group, your loved ones bolstering you. If that might mean talking to nobody. I personally I turn off my phone the night of. I don't want to talk to anyone. That's my method of, I am going to center myself. Some people like that last minute phone call of, you got this. Whatever it may be, manage it. There's no excuse for nerves getting the best of you. You applied, you knew it was coming. And if you have anxiety, and sometimes it does get better of you, then let's talk about it. Let's practice. Let's talk about what does center you. Short story. A couple of years back was working with an applicant who was very lucky to right off the bat, or in the early part of the cycle, get 5 interviews, right? Which is amazing, followed by 5 rejections. So this person comes to me and is like, I don't know what's wrong. It's got to be me at this point. And I'm like, I don't know. Have you done a mock interview with anyone here? Has anyone helped you? Well, I've been kind of practicing on my own. My family's been helping me. I'm like, you know what? Come on in. Let's do a mock. Let's see what's going on, right? We want to make sure there's nothing wrong with presentation or how you are answering your questions. And so we did a mock. 30 seconds in, I identified it right away. This person is high energy with a heavy dose of nerves and anxiety. So that came across as incoherent, all over the place, answering, rapid speaking, just coming across super jumpy. And so we talked about what does relaxation look like? And this person led on like, I am a long distance runner, running is how I center myself. And so we talked about, pre-interview, and this was when interviews were in person, whatever hotel you're staying out, make sure, or whatever you can do, whether it's the night before or morning of, this person said a 3-mile run is enough to calm me down. It burns my excess energy. I feel more coherent. So this person did that. So they were lucky enough to get 2 more interviews after this, or actually they spoke with me when they had 1 more interview, got 2 more. And guess what? With that kind of piece of calming self, this person got 3 acceptances. And so there was nothing wrong with them. They just, nerves got the best of them. So they found out the trick for them was burning that excess energy, 3 acceptances, right? And it could be other factors, but like I said, 30 seconds in, this person's presentation needed support. So it's good to get some professional guidance just to make sure you don't have anything else going on. And, I know that I've worked very hard on my interview persona. I'm still authentic, but I know, early on what my quirks were, and I worked very hard to eliminate them. This is usually in an in-person workshop where I'm like, think about how you present, body posture and whatnot. But in terms of being professional, let's avoid slang. Slang can vary regionally, culturally, and generationally. So let's be mindful that you are probably going to be interviewed, at least from the professional, the faculty is someone my age or older. Funny thing is, my colleagues and I who are much younger than me, we will check each other, like I'll use slang in a staff meeting, they'll use slang, and we're like, what does that actually mean, right? When I say regionally, my spouse is from the deep South. Our slang is very different, very, very different. And so when he's amongst his friends, I will be like, what does that mean, right? I'm always interested in learning. Speak calmly and confidently, enunciate. I know personally, I'm a super fast speaker, especially when I get into storytelling, when I'm amongst people I'm comfortable with, or nerves. And so I've practiced. I don't speak faster than I can enunciate or pronunciate, right? So you want to use the words enunciate or pronunciate as a way of practicing how fast, at what pace should you be speaking. Be kind to everyone. And I'm speaking both for in-person or virtually. You don't know who has say in how you are evaluated. When I used to interview grad students for the purposes of being an intern at my office, the front desk person was the first person I talked to. How was this person? How did they treat you? What were they like as they were waiting for their interview? Kindness or professionalism to people you think matter versus to everybody presents a very different person. And I want somebody who's going to be kind to everyone. Watch your nonverbal, whether you're in person or on camera. And I know on camera that can be pretty rough. Where do I look? Or feeling like, I've had people wiggle in their chair. I've had people stare off into this somehow unknown space. I've had people, like organize stuff on their desk because they think their body isn't being evaluated. I'm going to share screen really quickly. So you see how much you see of me. This might be good to evaluate. How much is that person seeing? You don't want to be the necklace wonder. You don't, where you're just this floating head where there's so much space. When I say wiggling, I'm like, I've had people do this. I know lately I've gotten in the habit of like folding and unfolding this cloth I have on my desk that I used to clean my glasses. And so you want to avoid these distractors, right? And we'll talk more about it tomorrow, but that's for virtual, even in person. I had somebody sit there and do this with a pen, an entire 45-minute interview. So watch your body language. I've had people, kind of wiggle their hair, or because they're virtual, kind of sit off, like lean back. I've seen the man spread. I've seen all sorts of things. So manage your body, like, bump to the back of the chair. You don't have to be this stiff upright, but like lean back into the chair. I'm okay with leaning a little bit to the side. I do that. I pick my hand up for gesturing. Again, things I've had to practice. I used to very much talk with my hands, almost like an interpretive dance. I've had to like calm that down. I keep one hand on my leg to be mindful of not starting an interpretive dance during an interview. For virtual, I look at the camera, but things that you can practice, right? To manage your nonverbal communication. And your nonverbal matters. You can express interest, anxiety, too much in someone's face, or confidence with your body language alone. 40% of an interview is your presence. That's even before you open your mouth. So be mindful of what you're presenting when you come day of or virtually. And let's talk about your responses, right? With behavioral or even situational type questions, it is very helpful to the interviewer if you have, if you set your responses into this. There's a lot of acronyms out there: park, star, car. I specifically use park as a way of structuring the answer, but giving some structure can, one, help you, control derailing or missing that train station altogether, of jumping around. So it's very hard for the interviewer to follow you, and kind of provide a layout of your response. So with behavioral or situational, either problem I faced or the problem at hand. The action I took for behavioral or action I would take for situational. Results based on what I did for behavioral or what I would hope would happen for situational. And then specifically for behavioral, what did I learn from this situation? What knowledge did I gain? And if it makes sense for the question or what was asked of you, application. So parka, what would I do differently, or how I've applied this differently for future circumstances? I know this sounds like a formula, but I am giving you a formula so you can help frame your response, and so it's not all over the place. Make sure you're answering the question that was asked of you. I've had so many people go to an interview with like, I must talk about this, and answer something completely different. No points to you if you're not answering the question that was asked. Forget what's in your head. Remember to listen and pay attention, and take a moment to review the question in your head so that you are answering what was asked of you, not what you want to tell them, because it's really important for you to tell them. Like, some folks are like, I really want to talk about this one experience or my research or whatever it may be. So kind of steer the interview to, let me just talk about this, but it may not be what's being asked of you or the example that best fits. Within your response, reveal who you are through your personal qualities, your strengths, your maturity, your readiness. Again, take a moment. Pause, think about what's being asked and what you can share. What's very helpful is to think about examples in advance, right? Examples of challenge and strength and success and difficult people and team. ahead of time. These are some pretty common themes that might come up beyond very specific to who you are. So if you think about 2 or 3 examples of each of these, then what you're doing is bringing up the best example that might fit the scenario. And that's how you ensure that you're answering the question, but also bringing up the example that's revealing parts of yourself that you want them to hear. And again, as we said in the beginning, they already saw the application. So they want to know the person behind it. They want to know, show them your personality. Show them who you are. Be authentic, your professional authentic self. And there is nothing that will prepare you, other than practicing. I've had people say, my first interview is this week, and you're the first person I'm talking to. So being afraid of practicing, being afraid of showing you who you are is the absolute worst thing to do. You want to make sure you're learning your quirks. I get it. Interviewing is uncomfortable and it's scary and you're putting yourself out there. But wouldn't you rather want to do that in a safe space where somebody could potentially give you feedback so that you can learn from it and apply it for your interview? I get it. It's scary and unnerving, but let's figure it out before it's the real thing. And then again, this might be more specific to in-person if you do choose to do in-person. Details to keep in mind. So know what your day looks like ahead of time so that you can plan it. If you are traveling somewhere, 1, be on time. So if you are flying or driving somewhere that's more than a few hours away, try to get there the day before so you can get a good night's sleep, wake up timely, know where you're going and how you're going to get there. If you drove there, where is parking? How are you going to drive there? What's traffic going to be like? If you flew there, how are you transporting yourself from the airport to the hotel, to the interview? What are you doing with your luggage in all of this? Make sure you're communicating with the school about lodging and transportation. They've brought in hundreds and thousands of interviewers over their years. I'm sure they have suggestions for you. If I would say pre-COVID, some schools also had the opportunity on a first come first served basis of housing with a current student. And if you're comfortable with that, I always say take that, take them up on that. Again, I don't know what's going on with COVID, if they're still offering that. I highly doubt it. But again, if that ever is an option, I would highly recommend housing with a current student because they're going to give you the inside scoop. Try to avoid surprises wherever possible. You don't want to be like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do with my luggage, or I don't know what the transportation is, or I don't know what platform they're using for my interview. And if I have to download something. Take me, for example, first time Mac doing a PowerPoint via Zoom, right? While I fixed all my PowerPoints, I actually never thought doing this via a Mac in one screen was going to be any different than a PC and 2 screens, right? Something I could have tried out ahead of time. Attire. Dress professionally and groom meticulously. We've all heard of COVID hair. I currently have COVID hair. So take a moment to see what that's going to look like. Avoid large, flashy jewelry, makeup, or attire that might be distracting, whether it's in person or on screen. And we can talk a little bit about that. It's not about owning an expensive suit. It's about you fitting your clothes and they present well, right? It's about how you feel in the clothing, how you walk in the clothing, how you sit in the clothing. Again, when I used to go to Stanford, it would be like a sea of black. It looked like everyone was going to like a funeral. But I have also on the flip side had somebody come in with a very loud shirt or very dangly jewelry that was just very distracting. Hair, you know, I have purple in my hair. I'm not going to change that of who I am, but I might, you know, I also have long hair. I'm not going to address the purple. That's me. I might, though, I am going to address the long hair and pin it back a little bit. So again, part of grooming meticulously and because I do know that with bangs, I'm constantly shoving my hands behind my ears. So again, I would pin it back, not because it's long, it's because I don't want to be constantly touching my face and distracting myself. Be mindful of body language, treat everyone with respect, and silence your cell phone. There's no reason a phone is going to be on, but also, especially in the virtual environment, I live in the Apple universe. So if one thing dings, everything starts dinging, my iPad, my phone, my watch. So I'm going to silence everything so that, again, I'm not presenting as a distraction during the interview. And lastly, I've talked about it once, but have confidence. As I've mentioned, confidence and how you present yourself is a huge chunk of your interview, right? That's really my last screen. So I'm going to end the show. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to turn on my screen. This is where in an in-person workshop, I would like model unfortunate behaviors, but there is, you know, looking away. Like, I'm really excited about your school because, right, that's not confidence. There's also this person, if you can see that, that's just scary to me when someone, especially in person, looked like they wanted to jump on my lap. It's finding what does confidence look like. And when I was saying, you know, I do play with my hair, so I would pin it back. Men with long hair, if that's part of who you are, just do something about it. You know, again, you shouldn't change who you are, but you should be groomed meticulously. People have asked me about body art, piercings, and what they might do about that. I have piercings. I do wear earrings. Right now, I'm just taking a break from them. I might be more mindful that they're small and again, not distracting. Having said that, I would also be thinking about, again, I want you to be authentic, but also considering who you're presenting yourself to. If you are interviewing at a very private conservative school, I might be mindful of certain piercings. Oh goodness. I might be mindful of how that might present, but again, bigger picture, are you going to fit with that school, right? If multiple colored hair and multiple piercings is going to be an everyday piece of you, and this is a very conservative school. So that's part of you also understanding how is this school responding to you. An interview is a two-way streak or a two-way window. While they're evaluating you, you are also evaluating them. It's a courtship, right? It's a dance. And so you also want to know how how they treat you. I've had people go to an interview, obviously at a school they selected. And I'm just going to speak from a California student perspective. So interview at a school they selected and actually pick an out-of-state school because of the feeling of the respect of how they were treated, how that showed up during the interview over an in-state school, which sounds surprising, but they're like, this school welcomed me for who I was. I didn't feel like I had to hide myself. In fact, because of things I wrote in my application, they made sure I was very comfortable and accepting of who I was. So again, it's a courtship. While you may be like, I just want them to love me, you also want to be treated well. And so I know we are hitting time and I want to be respectful of time. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.